Hey there once again, fellow flight simmers. So this little video here is just going to be basically the part that I cut out of the previous video, which was the evolution of my home cockpit. But this is the part that was going to talk about my flight simulation journey. And I just decided, you know what, might as well put it out. It's not so much because you guys would be interested in my flight simulation journey, but because it's just a little bit of a show and tell with some stuff that I came across when I was searching through my boxes. So now let's go over to the previously recorded video and I'll see you on the other side. So my journey started back in 1985, I believe. I was in junior high school and I had a friend who had a Commodore 64, and he would invite me over to his house once in a while, and he would sometimes just let me be in his room and use the computer and everything. And I came across this little gem called Solo Flight back in the day. Um, and that's what I used to use. This is not an actual picture of his system or mine. It's just a picture I found on the internet, but it's pretty much what we had back in the days, except I never had that fancy 1084S monitor. I used to use a 13-inch color TV for my setup. So this is the kind of graphics we had back in the day in 1985, 86, whenever that was. Although Microsoft was already doing their flight simulation series before that, I never used that one, never got to know that one. And so this is the one I started with. Eventually, I did get an Amiga 500, which had amazing graphics and sound, but I don't recall ever playing any flight simulation games or any flying games. Maybe I had a Red Baron game, I believe it was, but those were just, strictly games. They didn't even try to imitate flying or anything like that. And then after that, I had an Amiga 3000, which was way more powerful, if you can call it that. It had a 30 megahertz Motorola processor, and I believe I had 8 megabytes of memory back in that time. That must have been around the early 1990s when I got a hold of that. Actually, I had a friend in high school who was very generous, and he gave me the Amiga 3000 with a ton of games, floppy disks, the 3.5-inch floppies. And that's the reason I was able to acquire that computer. Otherwise, I never would have been able to afford it. I've always been lagging way behind on the computers that can actually fly these flight simulators. My computers have always been well underpowered, for the time. So after that, there was a very long time when I didn't even use any computers at all. I left my Amiga 3000 at my mom's house when I moved out and got married. And next time, I went to try to, get it someday. I don't remember. It was many months after that that I came back to try to get it. And I asked her, "Where's my computer?" And she actually said, "Oh, I thought you didn't want it anymore, so I threw it away." And even up until now, that it hurts. That was an amazing computer, and I mean, even now it would be worth a lot of money, especially with all those original floppy disks that I used to have. So, well, too bad it's gone now. All right, but I'm gonna go ahead and go a little bit farther up the line now. So my first Windows computer that I had was in 1999, I believe. It was a Hewlett Packard. It was about a 500 megahertz processor. It probably had like 64 megabytes of memory, and I don't even think it had a video card in it. I eventually bought a video card, but it was a very, very small, like I don't even remember how many megabytes of video I had, probably 32 or less. So it was a very low-end computer. And I had a Flight Simulator 98. And then I got Flight Simulator 2000. And then I got this one here, my Microsoft Flight Simulator 2002. This is still my original copy that I had from back in the day. Um, I still have it. It looks like it's in almost perfect condition if you look at it. But so yeah, this is one of the ways that I was starting to do this flight simulation stuff. And then eventually, I got Microsoft Flight Simulator 2004. This is still the original one that I got back in the day as well. I've had it all these years, just put away somewhere there. Um, back in those days, they used to come on CDs. So this one actually used 4 CDs uh, to install the entire flight simulator. I don't like calling them games. So yeah, so this is the one I flew the longest. Actually, for this one here, we actually had a bunch of packs that we can buy, to add aircraft to it. Obviously, back in those days, we didn't have the ability to download as much as we do now. I know there was probably a few things you can buy, but it wasn't readily available like it is now. So, we got these packs with different aircraft, and they weren't that detailed. I had a ton of aircraft, and obviously, as you can see right here, for $19, you could only expect a little bit out of that, right? And then I also got this one here, which was jets, so you can add jets. This was actually made for 2002, as you can see up here, but it also said it was compatible with Flight Simulator 2004, which is also known as FS9 in the installer. And yeah, so this gave you, about what, 6 jets right here that you can fly. I mean, they weren't very detailed, like I said, but it was okay. And then I also got one with helicopters. It seems like even way back then, I was already a little bit into helicopters. So, and this one actually says for FS 2002 and 2004. So this one gave you like 9 helicopters right here. And I think it also gave you a little bit of scenery for heliports, oil rigs, and some Hawaiian scenery right here too. So I don't remember how much this one was. I used to buy a lot of these at Fry's Electronics, which unfortunately is gone now. And then you can also buy very high quality aircraft, single aircraft installers. I think this one included the Airbus 330, like it says right there, and Airbus 340. And this was also for Flight Simulator 2002 and 2004. It actually tells you that it will not run on Windows 98, this one. The bad thing about simulators, and I've always hated that, is that they'll tell you what the requirements are. Like this one says you need at least 256 megabytes of RAM and a 32 megabyte video card. But if you only have the minimum that they recommend, it's kind of the same thing now with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and X-Plane. You will have a horrific experience with the bare minimum. So I don't recommend having the bare minimums, but that's usually what I had. All right, so another kind of packages that we can buy is airports. So this one included Atlanta, Bari, Dallas, Los Angeles, Manchester, Newark, Orlando, Philadelphia, and Rome. So it's a ton of airports for 1999 back in those days. Um, and they were pretty good. They obviously they don't compare to what we have now, but they were pretty good. I spent a ton of money on these things. Well, for me, it was a ton of money back then. And then before we had Orbix, and I guess you can say Ortho, the way we consider it now, we actually had packages like these. These started coming up. Um, it was very late in the. It actually says it's compatible with 2002 also. I remember clearly getting it for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2004, Century of Flight. But this made it so much better than the original. I don't remember what the texture quality was on these, but this was a lot better than what the Microsoft Flight Simulator came with as default. So it gave you a lot more detail in the mountains and everything. I mean, it was not bad, but of course my computer could barely run it. And then uh, in 2006, I bought Microsoft Flight Simulator X, which was, I got it pretty much on release day. I don't remember exactly when I got it, but I got the gold edition. At this time, I don't even remember. Here's what it includes, the extra bonus things. So this one said it recommended a 1 gigahertz processor, and then it had you needed, if you had Windows XP, 256 megabytes of memory, Windows Vista 512, and then it recommended a video card with 32 megabytes of memory. And let me tell you, I was never able to play this simulator because my computer could run it maybe at 12 frames per second. So now during this time, they came on DVDs now. So it only came on 2 DVDs instead of 4 CDs. So technology was coming up. We still didn't have Blu-rays yet, and I still have all my little booklets and everything that it came with. And if somebody wants a CD key, you can have it right there. I don't use this anymore, obviously. All right, so that pretty much brings us up to about 2017 or so. I moved back to Southern California in 2016 at the very end, and I had, like I said, I had everything in storage. So when I took it back out, and I started trying to use it with, by then I already had a more modern computer, obviously. So I was gonna run FSX. I said, okay, finally this computer should be able to run it. So then when I acquired all my Saitek stuff, I got the yoke, the rudder pedals, the throttle quadrant, and then the radio panel, the multi-panel, and the switch panel. Then I started coming across with that apparently it didn't work very good with FSX. So then I was like, great. So now that I can finally use this flight simulator, now the hardware that I got is not really compatible with it. And I didn't waste too much time looking into it, so maybe it is, but I just didn't want to waste more time. So I had heard about X-Plane, that it works great with X-Plane. And I think I've heard of X-Plane before during, the time that I was using the other simulators, but I never really considered getting it. Never even really knew how good it was. So in May of 2018, I decided to go ahead and get X-Plane because all the panels worked with it apparently. So I did. And yes, indeed, I was able to get the multi-panel, the switch panel, and everything working fine in X-Plane. And I was very pleasantly surprised, by how good it was. And from that moment on, I didn't even miss FSX, or let alone FS 2004. So I continue using X-Plane. Then that's when I came across uh, trying to build these switch panels and everything you see behind me here. And when Microsoft Flight Simulator came out in 2020, me and another flight sim buddy of mine, we actually stayed up and we used that cheat where you could actually get it ahead of time by using a time zone that was way ahead of ours here in the Pacific time zone. So I got it on release date and everything, but and it was amazing. It was great. It was pretty and everything, but uh, something about it, just kept me wanting, to go back to X-Plane. I think it was just, like when all the buildings and everything, the trees look like molten wax. That really turned me off. And then obviously after I built, all these switch panels and everything, and I couldn't use that with Microsoft Flight Simulator, I really missed flying with the convenience of having all these switches and everything. So that's another reason why I didn't, continue using Flight Simulator 2020. And so I continued using X-Plane 11 until X-Plane 12 came out. And then I got X-Plane 12, pretty much as soon as it released, as soon as I was able to get it. And once, I got it going and everything, and it was still in beta, so there was still a lot of hiccups with it. And so I still said, that's fine. I'm completely happy going, to stay with X-Plane 11 still. And I kept every once in a while when there was some major updates, I kept updating X-Plane 12. And there was one point where it was like, wow, like what a difference. Not only was my computer able to run it somewhat decently for at least for general aviation airplanes and everything, I could use the Zibo on it, but I have to lower the number of world objects or the density of the vegetation and all that a little bit, because if I try to run everything the way I do in X-Plane 11, or the way I run with GA aircraft on X-Plane 12, it just kind of boggles the system down. And like I said before, it gets down to about 23, 24 frames per second or so, when I'm at a big airport, of course. So that's where I'm at now. I have X-Plane 11, X-Plane 12, and MSFS 2020, which I haven't really even touched in over 2 years, maybe by now. Maybe it's a little bit unfair of me. I should give it another chance and maybe install all the hundreds of updates that there must be, but we'll see. So far, right now, like I said, I'm perfectly happy with X-Plane 11 and X-Plane 12, and that's why I'm doing all this SimVimX stuff. All right, so that's pretty much my story. It's a very condensed story, but throughout the years, I've held on to all those boxes and everything, and it's always kind of cool to, come across some of that old stuff. I do have a lot of old stuff from the 80s and 90s still put away. So thank you guys very much for watching. See you on the next one.